Welcome to MBTI Spectrum, where we dive deep into the fascinating world of personality types. Today, we're exploring something that hits close to home for everyone: pet peeves. You know, those little things that make your eye twitch and your blood pressure rise faster than an ENTJ's career trajectory. Get ready to laugh, cringe, and maybe feel a little called out as we explore what drives each personality type absolutely bonkers. Before we dive in, here's a little secret. Understanding what irritates different personality types isn't just entertaining, it's like having a manual for navigating human relationships. So, whether you're trying to avoid driving your INFJ friend crazy or wondering why that ESTP in your life seems perpetually annoyed by your careful planning, this guide is for you. Let's jump right in. INTJ, the Mastermind's Menaces. If there's one thing that makes an INTJ's perfectly structured world crumble, it's inefficiency. But not just any inefficiency. Picture this. You're in a meeting that could have been an email, watching Karen from accounting explain a simple spreadsheet for the third time, while your brilliant solution sits unheard in your head like a forgotten TED Talk. That's INTJ hell right there. But what really gets under an INTJ's skin? It's when someone says, "That's just how we've always done it." 7 words that make them contemplate a career change faster than you can say logical fallacy. They're sitting there, mentally calculating how many hours of human productivity are being wasted, while their eye twitches at a frequency only dogs can detect. And don't even get them started on small talk. Nothing makes an INTJ more uncomfortable than being trapped in a conversation about the weather with someone who seems determined to describe every cloud formation they've seen since 2019. They're not being rude when they try to escape. They're just saving their sanity, one avoided conversation about weekend plans at a time. ENFP, the champion's challenges. Want to see an ENFP's soul leave their body? Tell them they need to follow a strict, unchangeable routine. Watch as their usually vibrant energy deflates faster than a balloon at a porcupine convention. These free spirits get particularly twitchy when faced with mundane, repetitive tasks, like filing paperwork in alphabetical order while sitting in a grey cubicle under fluorescent lights. It's their personal version of workplace torture. But what really sends them over the edge? It's when someone dismisses their ideas as unrealistic without even hearing them out. Picture an ENFP bubbling with excitement about their latest innovative project, only to be met with a deadpan, "That's not how things work in the real world." You can literally see their rainbow-coloured dreams being painted over with bureaucratic beige. And here's the kicker. They absolutely cannot stand being told to calm down when they're enthusiastically sharing something they're passionate about. It's like telling a puppy to be less happy about seeing its favourite human. Their response? Usually getting even more excited, just out of spite. Take that, enthusiasm police. ISTP, the Craftsman's complaints. Want to see an ISTP lose their cool faster than a motorcycle without brakes? Watch what happens when someone hovers over their shoulder while they're working on a project. It's like trying to pet a cat that's clearly giving you the touch me and lose a finger look. They're not being antisocial, they just believe personal space should be measured in acres, not inches. These mechanical wizards have a special kind of disdain for people who can't get to the point. You know those meetings where someone takes 20 minutes to say what could have been said in 20 seconds? An ISTP in that situation is mentally disassembling and reassembling an entire engine just to keep from screaming, "Get on with it!" Their time is precious, and they'd rather spend it doing literally anything else than listening to your elaborate explanation of why you're explaining something. But their ultimate pet peeve, it's when someone insists on helping them with a task they've got completely under control. Nothing makes an ISTP's eye twitch quite like an unsolicited assistant who keeps suggesting better ways to do something while actually making everything take twice as long. They've got this really. Just back away slowly and nobody gets hurt. ESFJ, the provider's provocations. If you want to see an ESFJ's nurturing nature transform into barely contained frustration, just watch what happens when people ignore basic social courtesies. We're talking about those folks who don't RSVP to events until the last minute. Or worse, say they'll come and then ghost faster than a dating app match. It's not just rude, it's a personal offence to their meticulously planned social calendar. But what really gets their blood boiling? It's when someone disrupts group harmony with unnecessary drama or conflict. Picture an ESFJ watching their carefully cultivated friend group descend into chaos because someone decided to start a debate about pineapple on pizza during what was supposed to be a nice, peaceful dinner. They're not mad, they're just disappointed. And somehow, that's worse. And don't even get them started on people who forget important dates or dismiss traditions they hold dear. Watching someone shrug off a meaningful anniversary or family tradition hits them harder than a caffeine crash after a triple espresso. They remember everyone's birthday, favourite colour and coffee order. Is it too much to ask for a little reciprocal consideration? INFP, the Mediator's Miseries. Want to witness an INFP's soul slowly crumble? Put them in a situation where they're forced to engage in superficial networking or small talk at a corporate event. Watch as they desperately search for the nearest exit or houseplant to hide behind while someone drones on about their LinkedIn connections and quarterly sales targets. It's like watching a poet being forced to write product descriptions for industrial cleaning supplies. But what really makes them die inside? It's when people dismiss or invalidate emotions, theirs or others. Picture an INFP witnessing someone respond to a heartfelt confession with, "Just get over it," or "It's not that deep." They're not just offended, they're experiencing second-hand emotional damage on behalf of all humanity. Their empathy meter is running so high it's about to short-circuit. And here's the ultimate INFP trigger: watching someone be knowingly inauthentic or fake. Nothing sends them into an existential crisis quite like being around people who change their entire personality depending on who they're talking to. It's like watching a one-person theatre production nobody asked for. And the INFP is the unwilling audience member who can see right through every act. ESTJ, the executive's exasperations. If you want to see an ESTJ's perfectly organised world descend into chaos, just watch what happens when people don't follow established procedures. We're talking about those rebels who decide to get creative with the expense report format or submit their weekly updates in interpretive dance form. The ESTJ isn't angry. They're just wondering how humanity has survived this long with such blatant disregard for structure. Their blood pressure reaches dangerous levels when they encounter what they call selective incompetence. You know, those people who somehow manage to mess up simple tasks so consistently that someone else, usually the ESTJ, has to do it for them. It's like watching someone deliberately put the milk in the cupboard and the cereal in the fridge, all while maintaining eye contact. The ESTJ knows you know better, and that's what makes it worse. But their ultimate pet peeve: last-minute changes to well-laid plans. Nothing makes an ESTJ's eye twitch, quite like someone casually suggesting a small adjustment to a meticulously planned project 5 minutes before the deadline. They've probably already created 3 backup plans and a risk assessment matrix, and here you are, suggesting we wing it like some chaos-loving freestyle organisational anarchist. INTP, the Logician's Lamentations. Want to see an INTP's usually calm demeanour crack faster than a quantum physics equation? Watch what happens when someone interrupts their deep thinking session with meaningless chit-chat. It's like someone just unplugged their mental computer mid-download of the universe's secrets. They're not being rude when they stare at you blankly. They're just trying to remember where they were in their 17-layer theoretical framework about the nature of consciousness. But what really sets off their internal error message? It's when people make absolute statements without any logical backing. Nothing makes an INTP's brain short-circuit quite like hearing someone confidently proclaim, "That's just common sense," as if common sense wasn't the least reliable form of knowledge since medieval medical practices. They're already mentally preparing a 45-minute presentation complete with peer-reviewed sources to debunk that single sentence. And don't even get them started on people who resist logical solutions because of feelings or tradition. Watching someone choose an inefficient method simply because that's how we've always done it is enough to make an INTP consider becoming a hermit in the mountains, where they can contemplate the universe's mysteries in peace, surrounded by nothing but equations and their own thoughts. ESFP, the performer's pains. If you want to see an ESFP's sparkle dim faster than a dying disco ball, trap them in a situation where they have to follow rigid, unchangeable rules, with zero room for creative interpretation. It's like watching a rainbow try to exist in grayscale, physically possible, but spiritually crushing. Their energy literally starts leaking out of their body like a deflating balloon at a fun-free party. Their biggest pet peeve? People who take forever to make decisions or can't go with the flow. Picture an ESFP watching their friends spend 45 minutes deciding where to have dinner while the night's precious fun potential slips away like sand through an hourglass. They're not impatient. They just understand that life's too short to spend it reading Yelp reviews when there's adventure waiting right around the corner. And here's what really drives them up the wall: negative people who rain on their parade. Nothing makes an ESFP more frustrated than someone who responds to every suggestion with, "well, actually," or, "but what if something goes wrong?" They're not ignoring the potential problems, they just believe that sometimes the best plan is no plan at all. Try telling that to their anxiety-ridden ISTJ friend who's currently making a pros and cons list for going to the bathroom. INFJ, the counsellor's criticisms. Want to see an INFJ's serene facade crack like a fortune cookie in a blender? Watch what happens when they encounter people being intentionally fake or manipulative. These intuitive empaths can smell insincerity from a mile away, and it hits their system like expired milk hits a sensitive stomach. They're not just annoyed, they're personally offended on behalf of authentic human interaction everywhere. But what really makes their soul shrivel? Shallow conversations and forced networking events. Picture an INFJ at a party where everyone's talking about the weather while they're internally screaming, "Can we please discuss the meaning of existence or at least something deeper than your new coffee maker?" They're not being antisocial. They're just allergic to small talk and break out in existential hives when forced to engage in it. And don't even get them started on people who interrupt their carefully planned alone time. Nothing sends an INFJ into a spiral quite like someone barging into their recharge sanctuary with, "Why are you being so antisocial?" It's not that they don't like people, but they just need more alone time than a cat in a house full of toddlers. Their idea of hell? An open office plan with mandatory team-building exercises every Friday. ENTP, the debater's distresses. If you want to see an ENTP's witty demeanour transform into pure frustration, just watch what happens when someone refuses to engage in a friendly debate by saying, "That's just my opinion." It's like dangling a piece of string in front of a cat and then putting it in a sealed container. Pure torture. They're not trying to start a fight. They just want to mentally spar until 3 a.m. about whether hot dogs are technically sandwiches. Their biggest pet peeve? People who can't handle being proven wrong, or worse, those who cling to beliefs without any logical foundation. Nothing makes an ENTP's brain cells commit mass suicide quite like hearing "because I said so" or "that's just how it is." They're already pulling up 17 different sources on their phone while simultaneously preparing a PowerPoint presentation titled "Why Everything You Just Said Is Wrong, a Comprehensive Guide." And here's what really grinds their gears: rigid rules without logical explanations. Watching someone enforce a pointless regulation just because it's policy is like watching someone use a smartphone exclusively as a paperweight. The ENTP isn't being difficult when they question everything. They're just allergic to arbitrary constraints and break out in sarcasm when exposed to them. ISFJ, the defender's disruptions. Want to witness an ISFJ's nurturing nature transform into barely contained frustration? Watch what happens when people disrupt their carefully maintained routines and systems. It's like watching someone reorganize their meticulously arranged bookshelf by color instead of genre. Pure chaos. They're not being inflexible. They just know that their way works, and they have spreadsheets to prove it. But what really makes their blood pressure spike? When people don't appreciate or respect the effort they put into taking care of others. Picture an ISFJ spending hours preparing a thoughtful, home-cooked meal, only to have someone casually suggest ordering takeout instead. They're not just hurt, they're experiencing the kind of emotional damage that requires stress baking 3 batches of cookies to process. And here's the ultimate ISFJ trigger: Watching people ignore traditional values or dismiss established ways of doing things without good reason. Nothing sends them into a silent internal meltdown quite like someone suggesting they shake things up just for the sake of change. They're not resistant to change, they just believe that if something isn't broken, applying a sledgehammer to it isn't the best solution. ENTJ, the commander's complaints. If you want to see an ENTJ's composed leadership presence crumble faster than a poorly executed business plan, just watch what happens when they encounter incompetence masquerading as confidence. These efficiency masters can smell time wasting from 3 meetings away, and nothing makes their eye twitch quite like watching someone proudly present a half-baked idea as if it's the next big innovation. Their ultimate pet peeve. People who lack initiative or wait to be told what to do at every step. It's like watching paint dry while holding a paintbrush. The physical pain of witnessing potential productivity being wasted is almost too much to bear. They're not being controlling when they take charge. They're just allergic to stagnation and break out in strategic planning when exposed to it. And don't even get them started on people who prioritize feelings over results. Nothing sends an ENTJ into a strategic planning frenzy quite like hearing, "But that's now how we usually do it," or "We don't want to hurt anyone's feelings." They're not heartless. They just believe that progress shouldn't be held hostage by comfort zones, and they've got a 15-slide presentation ready to prove their point. ISTJ, the inspector's irritations. Want to see an ISTJ's methodical demeanour dissolve faster than their carefully organised filing system in the hands of a toddler? Watch what happens when someone doesn't follow the proper procedure, or, even worse, creates their own creative solution to a problem that already has a perfectly good standard operating procedure. It's like watching someone try to reinvent the wheel, but making it square for innovation. Their biggest pet peeve? Last-minute changes and spontaneous improvements to well-established systems. Nothing makes an ISTJ's soul leave their body quite like hearing, "Let's try something different," 5 minutes before a deadline. They're not being rigid. They just believe that chaos isn't a valid organisational strategy, no matter how many motivational posters say embrace the unexpected. And here's what really sends them over the edge. People who don't respect deadlines or commitment. Watching someone casually stroll in 30 minutes late to a meeting with a "sorry, traffic was crazy" excuse for the 5th time this week is enough to make an ISTJ consider becoming a hermit in a perfectly organised cave where everything happens exactly on schedule. ENFJ, the teacher's tribulations. If you want to see an ENFJ's warm, nurturing presence transform into barely contained frustration, just watch what happens when they encounter people being needlessly cruel or dismissive of others' feelings. These natural mentors can sense emotional discord like a weather vane in a hurricane. Oing. And nothing sets them off quite like watching someone deliberately hurt another person's feelings. But what really makes their harmonious world crumble? When people refuse to work together, or worse, actively create discord in group situations. Picture an ENFJ watching their carefully cultivated team dynamic fall apart because someone decided to start a passive-aggressive email war. They're not just disappointed, they're experiencing the kind of emotional distress that requires an emergency group therapy session to process. And don't even get them started on people who refuse to grow or accept feedback. Nothing challenges an ENFJ's patience quite like someone who consistently dismisses opportunities for personal development with, "That's just how I am." They're not trying to change you, they just see your potential like a master gardener sees a seed's future, and watching it go to waste is their personal form of torture. ISFP, the artist's aggravations. Want to witness an ISFP's gentle spirit turn into quiet rebellion? Try forcing them into rigid structures or telling them there's only one right way to do something creative. It's like telling a butterfly to fly in a straight line. Technically possible, but completely missing the point. They're not being difficult, they're just allergic to creative constraints and break out in artistic resistance when exposed to them. Their ultimate pet peeve: people who rush them to make decisions or demand immediate responses. Nothing makes an ISFP's inner artist recoil quite like being pressured to just pick something when they're still processing their feelings about all the options. They're not indecisive. They're making sure their choice authentically reflects their values, which takes more time than a microwave dinner. And here's what really drives them up the wall: when people dismiss or devalue emotional experiences and artistic expression. Watching someone respond to their heartfelt creation with, "But what's the practical purpose?" of a song is like watching someone use a Van Gogh to clean up a coffee spill. The ISFP isn't being oversensitive. They just believe that not everything needs to have a practical purpose to have value. ESTP, the entrepreneur's exasperations. If you want to see an ESTP's dynamic energy transform into pure frustration, just watch what happens when they're trapped in long, theoretical discussions with no practical application. Nothing makes these action-oriented types more restless than being forced to sit through a 2-hour meeting about the philosophical implications of changing the office coffee brand. They're not being impatient. They just believe that time spent talking could be better spent doing. Their biggest pet peeve? People who overanalyze everything instead of taking action. Picture an ESTP watching someone create a 50-slide presentation about whether they should join a gym, complete with SWOT analysis and 5-year projections. They're not being reckless when they say, "Just do it." They just understand that sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to tackle it head-on. And here's what really grinds their gears: unnecessary rules and bureaucratic red tape. Nothing sends an ESTP into a rebellious spiral quite like hearing, "We need to form a committee to discuss the possibility of maybe considering that suggestion." They're not trying to break rules for the sake of it. They just believe that efficiency shouldn't be sacrificed on the altar of procedure. And there you have it, friends, a complete tour of what makes each MBTI type tick, or rather, what makes them tick off. Remember, understanding these pet peeves isn't just about avoiding stepping on toes. It's about appreciating how differently we all experience the world. Whether you're an INTJ silently judging someone's inefficient spreadsheet or an ENFP dying inside during a monotonous routine, know that you're not alone in your specific brand of frustration. Next time you find yourself driving someone up the wall, maybe take a moment to consider if you're accidentally triggering one of these personality-specific pet peeves. And if you are, well, at least now you know why that ISTJ is looking at you like you just reorganized their perfectly alphabetized filing system by color. Thanks for tuning in to MBTI Spectrum. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with that friend who keeps interrupting your deep thinking sessions. They might finally understand why you keep giving them that look. Until next time, keep being uniquely you, pet peeves and all.